My people, welcome to the Temple of Geek podcast. My name is Kari, and I will be your host as we share our thoughts on the new Peacock show, Hysteria. If you haven't watched the show, save this episode for later and come back because there will be spoilers. If this is your first time tuning into the Temple of Geek podcast, welcome. The Temple of Geek podcast has been around since 2012 and is hosted by various geeks from the Temple of Geek team. Here we cover all manner of geek and pop culture news and events. To our returning listeners, thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here. And with me today is my amazing colleague and friend, Sue. Hey, welcome to the podcast, Sue. You've seen Sue before. We've been here many times doing our podcast. So just kind of briefly introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them a little bit about yourself.
I have been enjoying being part of the Temple of Geek team for a while now. I've been covering a lot of sci-fi and fantasy and mystery shows and movies. And I also talk about North African and Middle Eastern representation. And I also make earrings. So that's kind of a few things that I do. Yeah.
Very cool earrings, by the way. Love it. I have a few. I have a pair that she did with the Namor thing, the wings. So cool. Love
yes,
them.
Those ones are still my favorite.
All right, so first thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna give a little bit of synopsis of what the show is about. So basically, when a beloved varsity quarterback disappears during the satanic panic of the late 1980s, a struggling high school heavy metal band of outcasts realize that they can capitalize on the town's sudden interest in the occult by building a reputation as a satanic metal band. Until a bizarre series of murders, kidnappings, and reported supernatural activity triggers a leather-studded witch hunt that leads directly back to them. So, yeah. Satanic panic of the 1980s was wild.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was a kid when it all happened, but obviously, during the 90s, it was also kind of a topic, especially any type of, music that adults really didn't approve of, would come out and stuff. But this show, I think, encapsulated that feeling, that the way that things were back then so perfectly. It was so good. So we got 10 episodes, right? In this first season?
It was 8.
Yeah. Oh no, 8 episodes, but it was 60 minutes each. So Disney, how about that one? How about that one, Disney?
Long form storytelling. What a blessing.
Oh my God. They actually let the story breathe every episode, even with even though there were a few characters, it was quite an ensemble, but they all got to kind of show what their character was about, kind of shine a little bit. And it didn't feel rushed at all. I didn't think it felt, I don't think it felt rushed like that. But what were your initial thoughts about the series, Sue? When you first,
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. I think even right from the beginning when they first sort of introduce you to all of the satanic things that are happening and all of the weird things that are happening with the town, you're just sort of kind of hooked trying to figure out what is going on and who is involved with what. And then it becomes really clear that it's yeah, you kind of get an idea of who's actually involved and behind some of this. And I think it just it tells that story beautifully. And like you said, it gives the story room to breathe. It gives the characters room to grow. And because it's an ensemble cast and there's different sort of groups of people that we're following that are all interconnected, you actually get to sit with each of them and get to understand what their motivations are, what they're going through, what they're trying to achieve. And it's not just one of those shows where it just focuses on a couple people, even though the whole town is involved. And then you just sort of people just sort of become caricatures. This is a town and you actually get to, understand and get to meet and actually see the individual characters go through this journey. Because even for example, the one group of people are the high school students. And even though it's only 3, well, arguably 4 or 5 that are the center characters within, that school, there's still quite a few sort of supporting characters within that group of people that are still fleshed out fairly well. And you actually get to see them not just pop in, just for exposition or just, when the story needs something, pushed forward, they're actually part of the story. And it's like that, across the different sort of spheres within this environment that they've built out. And I think that was like it really good, and it gets you really engaged with the story. And again, like the 60-minute episodes, so much happens, but it's not just so much and you're just sort of jumping between plot points. It's you're actually getting to sit with these characters, sit with the plot, sit with what's going on, and actually have that room to like breathe and actually like feel like you're going through the story, and it's not just bullet points and action sequences that you're jumping between, right? Yeah, and like you said, it didn't feel rushed. It felt like you actually got to like experience the story and feel like the fear at various points, the curiosity, the confusion. They were able to elicit a lot of that. And one of the things that I think we'll talk about later is like the way that they actually shot the show, the cinematography in it as well, just amped up all of like the feelings so well. Like with the close-ups, with the little like lens flares, with the colors and the music. Oh, they did such a job.
No. It was really, really well done, I think. And it kept you engaged with the story because it would give you little bits and pieces of like mystery, but then it'll like sometimes like the episodes would end in a way that is like, whoa, what's going on? Why? Okay, I need the next episode like right now because I need to know why this is happening or why this certain person did this or did that, And of course, it like a very good like mystery story. It starts out one way, but then you immediately get the feeling that okay, this doesn't add up. Has to be another reason why this is happening, or it's not. There's gonna be like a little change of rule later on because you could tell that certain characters were like acting a little bit weird, And I think that the fact that all of these characters, they all had a way of just like the way they were interacting with each other, right? Their interactions felt very real, felt very, yeah, they felt very real. There wasn't, and you could tell that these characters had a lot to give to the roles that they were playing. And it was really, really cool. I loved that about the whole thing. Especially like okay, we're gonna start with how this whole mess started. Well, part of how this mess started, which was with three kids, right? Three high schoolers, outcast as they're called, right? And I think their name were it was Dylan, Jordy, and Spud, right? They had like this death metal type of they were part of a death metal group. And so this kidnapping happened. It was crazy. It was just out of nowhere. It was nobody knows what it was, why it was. And so everybody started speculating in the town that it was because the way that they found the things that were left behind by the kidnappers was like, satanic symbols and stuff like that. So people, of course, started speculating immediately that it had to do something with like, satanic rituals and everything. So, of course, these three, misfits decided that, well, you know what? People already think weird about us. Might as well just like go ahead and take advantage of that and make them think that we're part of that, And yeah, that started a whole snowball of crazy things.
Yeah. Which, if you think about it as like high school kids, like kind of a genius idea, but very short-sighted.
Yes.
Very, very short-sighted, right? And it was because also like there was a kidnapping, but they didn't know what happened to the kids. So there was no like real consequences yet. And they're like, okay, well, like this is a way, like this is something that everybody's talking about. So let's like take advantage of it. Again, like, kids who feel like they're invisible in school, who feel like they're not just like, outcasts. It's like they're actually invisible. Like nobody even pays attention to them as outcasts and they just want to be seen. And I think there's a really great line that I believe Julie Bowen says, who plays Dylan's mom. I think she said something along the lines of like, being seen is not the same as being known. And it's like what they just wanted to kind of be seen, but they weren't actually being like understood and being like people weren't actually like knowing them for who they are. It's just like they're just seeing them as like, the things that they're claiming to be that just happens to be the public discourse of the day.
No, absolutely. And I think that, of course, being a small town, makes it even worse because, you know, especially here, like, you know, high school setting, you have the popularity contest, you have the little groups of people, you know, the cheerleaders, the jocks, the nerds, you know, things like that. And then, of course, you know, whole popularity contest always happening. Somebody trying to get their name out there just to get known in the high school setting. Um, for whatever reason, you know, because yeah, they want to be popular or they want to make their life easier while they're in high school, you know, and stuff like that. Uh, but again, being that there's a small town, there's this saying in Spanish that goes, "Pueblo chico, infierno grande," small town, big hell,
Mm.
because even though a community, when it's small, it could be very tight knit, it could also cause a lot of misjudgments, a lot of gossip, a lot of things that are not true. You know, people just making up stuff about other people, especially when you don't understand certain things. And especially in the 80s when everything was like a jump scare about anything and everything, you know? So, and then of course, there's people that also are going to take advantage of kids, you know, other kids that see how these, you know, invisible or or outcasts are trying to, like, you know, get out of that shell. And then you're going to have people that are going to take advantage of that, you know, because they know that they could, I guess, manipulate them in a certain way, which we saw with Dylan and with what's her name? Was it oh my god, oh, Judith. Yeah, with Judith, you know, she saw that how he had a crush on that. She immediately knew that he had a crush on her, and that, you know, of course, he knew that she's a popular girl that everybody likes and everybody wants and stuff. So she knew how to use that, you know, to her favor. So yeah.
Yeah, and the peer pressure as well. That's another like very realistic part of the high school experience. And that's something that Judith does definitely take advantage of, like right away. And it's interesting that you say that because I think like there's like two different like reactions to within the town of like this whole satanic things. Like there's the people who are really curious, and it's the younger, you know, the high school kids who are very curious and want to like experiment and, you know, rebel a little bit. And then there's like the older generation in the town that, you know, keep amping up the fear and like keep going further down that rabbit hole of like satanic panic, right? Worrying about themselves, worrying about their kids, worrying about all of this stuff, right? And then there's people kind of fueling both sides, right? Like Judith on one side is like fueling that curiosity and pushing like the limits because she just wants something. She really just wants to kind of like feel something. She wants to also be seen in her own way and not just as like how people perceive her because she gets seen, but she's not understood. And she's trying to like push that one way. And then we have Tracy, the satanic panic mom, pushing it, you know, pushing the other side of that and causing this hysteria within the town and within the parents' minds because of like her own motivations and what she wants, right? And she wants to be like this town's savior. She wants to be seen in a different way as well. Like she wants to be seen as like this pillar of the community who's saving the community. And so she's like pushing this fear because it benefits her. So yeah, it's interesting how it's like nothing becomes something because of how people are trying to use it for themselves. And like the peer pressure on both sides and like the peer pressure for Tracy being like the religious pressure there, what she thinks she needs to do. And then on on Judith's side is like the pressure to kind of break out of the shell of who people think she is and to just break out of the shell of this town. Like she doesn't feel like she belongs in this town. She feels like she wants more, right? And she's kind of trying to like grasp at that any way she can. So, mhm.
No, and it's interesting because, you know, like you know, just adding up to what you said about, you know, Tracy and Judith, and, you know, support, you know, the main focus of the story is that supposedly this, you know, these three outcasts in this metal band are using the satanic panic to their advantage, but Judith is also using it to her advantage, you know, to try to rebel and, like you said, try to be seen in a different way. And then Tracy is using it to her advantage as well, to be able to create that panic so people flock to her. And, Jesus Christ, because of course we also get into the theme of religious fanatism, right? And Tracy creating in her mind that whatever she's doing, whatever actions, right or wrong, that she makes, she's justifying it to herself. Like, no, this is for the greater good. This is for God. This is, for so people can be saved. Especially when it comes to her daughter, she completely okay. So basically, Tracy has a daughter that she thinks is led astray because she believed some rumor that her daughter was sleeping around. And of course, the mother has to save her daughter. So she created this whole fiasco that basically was what started this whole thing. And then you could kind of, the way she went about it was like, I mean, to me, it was psychotic because she had her own daughter kidnapped, which is something that happened to her, which I can understand with, passed down trauma. What happened to her? She thinks that that's the correct way of doing things, right? But okay, so let's say that she started with good intentions to help her daughter. That was the action that she took. But then along the way, the actions that she kept taking kept getting worse, even more wrong each time. And each time she would find a reason to justify what she was doing. Again, in her mind, I'm doing it. No, this is even when it comes to murdering somebody. No, that was justifiable because it's for the greater good. Yeah, she was nuts.
Yeah. And she also found a way to not just justify, but to also put the blame elsewhere, everywhere but on herself, right? Like, and it was kind of, in a way, sort of brilliant, but in like a terrible way, watching her do that. Because you could see her like justifying all this stuff. And then I think that where it all kind of comes together, and I just sat there and I was like, no. At the very end, when she gets the entire town believing her, and even as the church goes up in flames, they're following her. And it's just kind of like, I was like, nah, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. Like, she's caught in a lie. Like, she's the reason that everything bad is and they're so far down the rabbit hole with her that they're like, no, we're with you. Like, she's literally getting arrested and they're like, no, we're with you, you're innocent, blah blah. And it's like she literally like was caught in this lie in the church, and then it causes it to go up in flames and they're still following her. And it shows you just how like people are so easily manipulated, and it's so easy for people to like attach, like, especially when there's a lot of fear involved, to like attach themselves to like, a false leader, a false, savior. And then because they don't want to like reconcile, the fact that they were wrong, that, their own actions were part of this big destruction that happened, they continue following that person. And I thought that was such a brilliant way to like bring that story together. And she starts believing, like, even though she was like at the point where she's like, I was wrong. As soon as they started being like, no, we're with you, we believe in you, we're gonna like get you out of jail or whatever. She's like, yes. Like, she like goes right back into her like God complex, and it was so brilliant, but in like a terrifying way. Yeah, this show, like right to the very end, is just like really, it knows what it wants to say in terms of a message, and it's keeping really well to like those themes, like, because they could have had like a happy sort of ending, not a happy ending, but like a satisfying ending where she gets arrested and all of that, and then the town goes back to normal. And it's like, no, there's too much that has actually happened, and it's too big for them to just go right back to normal. And I thought that they did that brilliantly. As much as I hated it, they did it brilliantly.
No, it was great. Me too. I was like, oh my God, why? I wanted to like smack her. Like, but that's the thing. Nobody learned anything. Well, the people that there was nothing learned. She was almost there, but like you said, as soon as they started like basically praising her, that was it. That's all she needed to come back.
Part of me was like, Jordy should have just let her die inside of that church, but then they would have made a martyr out of her. Like, like a lose-lose situation.
I think that was what Jordy didn't want. She's like, oh hell no, nope, we're not gonna make you a martyr. You're gonna, yep, you're gonna pay for what you did. You're gonna face, the consequences and stuff. Um, but that, my gosh, just again, the thematics, the messages that the show was trying to convey was so perfectly done. That's very big. Usually when it comes to like religious fanaticism like that, where people, they start with good intention, a lot of the times is that narcissistic complex that they have, because they basically, of course, they think that they're there because they're needed. Everybody needs them, you know. And then when people start, subscribing to that and actually paying attention to them in that way, that just starts getting worse, you know. And then we get what the ending that we got with her, again, not realizing that anything that she did was wrong. Nope, I did it for a reason, and these people are justifying it for me as well.
Yeah. And she becomes the Reverend in a way, right? Like she becomes this other, like she essentially steps into his shoes, like what he was like telling her purpose was and what he was sort of doing as well. Like even though it wasn't like in the public sphere, he was doing it individually by like essentially kidnapping kids and conditioning them, right? But she's essentially now been like taken that and done it at like a larger scale. And like religion doesn't actually have anything to do with it because it's all about like power and manipulation, and she doesn't realize that it's the narcissistic trait, right? Like you think that you're, or they think that they're, saving these people, and it turns into like this god complex, and that like beats out all rational thought and all, like they're not functioning as like they're not even able to like have rational thought around what they're doing anymore because they're so bought into their own like ideas and what's the word? Not hypocrisy, what is it? Hubris. They're so bought into their own hubris that they cannot see beyond it. And even when she sees what the Reverend like has done, in arguably she should be able to tell that that's wrong, she's still following him and his path because again, for her to like finally is for her to be able to admit that he was not a good person. She then has to admit that what he did to her when she was a teenager was wrong. And her entire life since then was on this path that was determined by somebody who was a predator and an abuser. And she can't reconcile with that. So instead she leans into, the purpose that he tells her she has. And she believes it. And she like, yeah, she essentially it's insane in a good way. Like in an entertaining way in a show, but terrifying.
And like, because you could know, that stuff like that happens in real life, and especially with her having, that she had a complex of nobody noticing her, nobody paying attention to her, always in the background. Nobody would, listen to her whenever she tried to talk or anything. So she got a little bit of taste of that. People actually like paying attention to her, and that was it. That was it for her. It was.
She got a taste of that power. She got a taste of that recognition, taste of that admiration from people, like the taste of like being like the savior, and it got to her. Oh man, brilliantly acted by Anna Camp. I will say, I had a hard time believing that she had a kid that was in high school like that because she still looks so young. But the casting her in that role was incredible. She did such a good job acting that role. Yeah.
She's really good at kind of being an antagonist. Like she was a little bit in Pitch, and she was also in True Blood, also being a super villain, like antagonist in True Blood as well. So that was really cool. That was really good. And then now we get to the total opposite of how being a mother is with Julie Bowen, and how she was, being a mother to her son, type of mother that she was being. That even she was trying to protect her son. She was trying to understand her son, and she was trying to do the right thing. But again, the fear also got to her. But it went in a very different way, that fear that she had in her. It actually she internalized it and it manifested in a very crazy way, right? Essentially saying that she got, she was possessed. And this is when we get to the supernatural things of the show, which, yeah, I don't know, like, was it real what happened with the supernatural stuff? Was it all just like very exaggerated by how everybody else was seeing it? Like, they didn't explain that. They just left it up for interpretation, I think, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting with Julie Bowen's character specifically, Linda, right?
Uh, Linda Camp, yeah, Linda.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was really interesting with Linda that they show supernatural things happening to her in the beginning. And so you start believing that there's something supernatural going on there. And then it's not just her, like other people start experiencing and seeing these things too. And then you're kind of like, what is, like, I honestly thought that it was going to end with some sort of like bacteria that was in the water that they all that sort of started like contaminating, their minds essentially, and causing like the rash that they get and the hallucinations as like an explanation. But they don't actually do that. They pinpoint, like they basically say that it was like mass hysteria, like that manifested in a physical way. And you see Linda recover at the end without any sort of like treatment or intervention. It was just her like accepting the fact that there was nothing actually happening got her to become like healthy again. But again, like the way that the show shows it to you, you're kind of like, is this a like, false narrator? Like, are we seeing things that she's seeing but like isn't quite true? And I think they kind of are doing that, because the way that they shot some of these scenes, like the close-ups on the face and like the colors that they're using that feel very like almost like nightmarish, right? Like it doesn't feel like, it's not lighting, like when the earthquake first happens and everything turns red, it's like, but where are the red lights in the actual setting of what we're seeing? And there aren't any, right? It's like it's stylistic elements that they're using in the show to almost indicate that like, yeah, there's stuff happening, but like, are we actually supposed to believe this? Are we not? And you don't quite get to that realization till the very end. Then you're kind of like, wait a minute, like, did this actually happen? Did something pick her up and throw her across the room and up the stairs? And like, did that actually happen? Or was this sort of like all in her mind? Right? Because like, I think we are meant to kind of like, not be sure either way. But I think it's like, yeah, the way that they sort of shot some of those more supernatural sort of scenes, there is a bit of like nightmarish quality to them. There is a little bit of like suspension of disbelief a little bit there as well, with how they're like lighting it and the close-ups and like the music and the sounds that are happening in those scenes. You're kind of like, oh, there's something like happening. But yeah, like, yeah, I don't know if there actually was a supernatural element or not. Um, I feel like they're kind of trying to be like, oh no, there wasn't really, but it's kind of like up to you as a viewer to like decide. And if there was a supernatural element, it wasn't satanic. Like it was. But they also at the very end, the other reason that I think that there wasn't, an actual supernatural element is because they do zoom in on one of the stained glasses in the church, and it shows like a depiction of the devil in the way that people were describing and seeing him. And so it's like, if you're going into this church every single week, or even more frequently if you're, going there for events and things like that, and you're constantly looking at these stained glass windows, then everybody's going to have a similar sort of like idea of what Satan looks like, if that's what you're constantly seeing and that's what's being depicted around you, right? And so when we're first seeing kind of like these reports happen and everybody's sort of saying the same thing, like the sheriff is like how are everybody, like how's everybody saying the same thing? And then like at the end when you see the stained glass, you're kind of like, oh, because they're all seeing the same thing, right? So it kind of like it doesn't quite pull the rug from under you, but it's sort of like giving you a little bit of like an explanation for what could have been, what people would have interpreted as supernatural. And it's kind of right in the way where when there is this mass hysteria, when there is like, you know, something at that magnitude sort of happening where the entire town is like in such a like heightened state of fear of like, Satan, then people will start seeing things or thinking, they saw things or whatever. And they would all sort of corroborate things because it's like there's this sort of, you if you believe something enough and you start seeing other people experience it, you'll start thinking that you're experiencing it too. It's very interesting, but I love that they didn't quite give us like a clear cut answer, but they sort of give us enough sort of like hints at the end there of it being like maybe what we saw wasn't exactly what happened.
No, no, no. I love that. And then just, again, adding to what you said, I think that the whole message there, it's very psychological. The mind is, mind is a wonderful thing, but it could like really mess with you too. And like you said, if, the people, the mind is going to see the same thing that everybody's mind is going to see the same thing that they've been seeing the whole time, of course. And then, like you said, all those physical manifestations, that is also a real thing, I this is crazy because I love that how they use, you could also see it as, the actual depiction of the devil, seeing the devil, and the way that they were getting all that stuff, very like a metaphor to psychological issues that people go through and what goes on in everybody's head, how things are, how they might see things, even though it's not real. So it was very cool how they depicted that, as a literal thing for us to like kind of get a picture of what goes on through these people's heads. Okay, so I want to bring something up real quick. I think one of the showrunners or the creators of the show, he had said that it's just there's a boogeyman in every generation, right? Something that all are going to, have a fear of, let it be TikTok or this or that. Like, but it's just interesting how the younger generation that were supposedly into all the bad stuff grow up and they become what their parents how they were, and they start with the whole mass hysteria thing with whatever scare is during that generation. And like it's always like a cycle. It's a cycle all the time. And the interesting part is that, how the kids went through that and they were the ones that were rebelling and like, no, this is not bad. It's just how we express. But then they grow up and then they become the same thing and do the same thing to their kids. Right. Um, and I guess, the show, I guess that's one of the things that he wanted to do with the show was, that type of commentary that, because we see with Tracy, she grew up in the 60s. Her thing was being free. She was a hippie, she smoked weed. She was thing. And then her mom decided that, or her parents, super religious parents, decided that, that was dangerous, that was bad. And then that's when they decided to basically have the Reverend kidnap her and brainwash her and stuff. And then she goes and grows up and does the same thing to her kid. Um, yeah.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I was going to point out earlier as well that with like the hives and the hallucinations and the visions and all of that, none of the younger kids went through that. Even though they suppose like they are the ones who like believed in, especially that group that actually believed like they were, joining a satanic cult. And even the one girl who didn't want to join at one point, like she got invited in and then she like didn't want to do it. And Doherty like spits in her like fake blood in her face and she like rats them out. Even she doesn't go through like the same symptoms as like the older generation. But you're right, like they're gonna grow up and they're gonna be the same, they're gonna do the same thing to their kids, and there's gonna be some new boogeyman thing, and it's just like there's always gonna be something that we don't understand in every single generation. And young people are always going to be curious about it and want to know about it. And then like as you get older, you lose that curiosity. It almost gets educated out of you. And then like beat out of you. Like you get to a point in your life where like curiosity is no longer a good thing, or it doesn't feel like a good thing. It feels like unknown and scary. And so then you become scared of it, and you no longer have that sort of like curiosity and rebellion and wanting to understand, and you just automatically like label things. But yeah, you're right. Like there's a boogeyman in every generation, they're gonna end up doing that same cycle. If we ever get like, further story, I wonder what they might do with it. But
Yeah. So now let's get into a little bit of the performances. What was like a standout performance for you in the show?
oh man, there's so many good ones. I want to say Julie Bowen and Anna Camp. Like, I mean, listen, two incredible actresses. Like, they're gonna do an incredible job, right? And especially the scenes where like it's the two of them together, like the way that they like play off of each other, especially that in the finale. Oh my goodness, it was so
Oh,
good. It was
so
so
good. Oh
good.
my
Oh
God.
my goodness. Yeah. I feel like everybody did a really good job in the show. But those two just, I mean, there's a reason they're, well known, respected actors in their field, right? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think the same for me. And then I liked because again, their characters were like kind of like mirror image of each other, like, you know,
Hmm.
yin and yang, just the way that, one was doing things, she was fearing, but she was like, really loving and actually did have that care for her son, while Tracy on the other hand thought she did, but she was doing everything like the most wrong way possible and stuff. So that created that friction between them. And man, that just like you said, that just played off of each other with the character whenever they interacted and stuff. So good. So good.
I, yeah, I mean, yeah, I knew as soon as I saw Julie Bowen being the mom, I was like, okay, she's gonna have a much bigger part to play. There's no way she's just gonna be the mom of, and being kind of passive. And I'm really glad that we got to see her do this role and got to see so much of, like you said, like say different sides of the same coin. And the way that Linda, even though she thought her son was like a satanic worshiper, she thought he was like the reason that she got like lifted up in the air and tossed around the house and injured in that way. Like, and even then she was treating him with so much care and kindness. Even though she was afraid, she still wanted to care about him and protect him and hopefully try to like, guide him back. Whereas with Tracy, she just got like a whiff of a rumor and she just immediately just like, you know, just hammers down on her daughter and goes through her stuff and goes through her room and makes all these assumptions. She doesn't even talk to her. She doesn't even ask. She doesn't even like try to understand her. And when Faith, her daughter, was trying to like explain and say, like, she was not even hearing it. Like the birth control that she finds, which was supposed to be, helpful for her cramps. Like she wasn't even like thinking or considering, like just like she just made up her mind of that her daughter is bad and is going to fall into the same bad habits that she had when she was younger and just went like, you know, like went crazy with it. Whereas Linda, even though not just her, but the whole town was saying that her son was into like these evil things, like, yes, she was losing her patience with him a little bit and she kind of, raised her voice at him a little bit, but it was out of fear for him and concern for him. And she was trying to like she didn't know how to bring him back, but she also wasn't like judging him right away and, making all these assumptions. And then, like she was trying to save him without alienating him. And I mean, and this is why he stuck around at the end and was like, there to help save her when he thought that she was actually possessed. And also why he never hates her. Like even though he doesn't agree with like what she was, how she was, um, dealing with him, he never actually hates her. Whereas Tracy's daughter Faith was like before even any of this stuff went down, was like fearful of her mom and didn't, you know, like was almost didn't really want to have like much of a relationship with her mom, but didn't have a choice because all she had was her mom, right? So it's really interesting, like, seeing the parallels there and yeah, they both acted it so beautifully.
Yeah. And then also the way that Julie would try her best to keep, she was doing what she could to keep her son out of danger, out of, put him into. But then Tracy had no problem putting her daughter in such crazy predicaments, like the fact that she
Right into the fire.
Rhonda, exactly. And the fact that,
And blames her
she
too.
blamed her for it and then made her think
Yeah.
that she was this poor guy. And she was like, well, you did what you had. Like, how are you okay? Your daughter is like feeling like crap.
Yeah. Trying to save you. Like she accidentally hits this, well, not accident. She hits this guy and accidentally hurts him more than she intended to save her mom who was about to die in his hands. And like, not a thank you, not a don't worry about it. No, I got you. Like you did this, but like it was wild seeing that. And then getting her to like try and find evidence and like,
Yes, yes. How do you do that to your daughter?
and how do you see yourself as like a savior and a good person and a follower of like, the good religion that you believe in, and then you do all of this nasty stuff behind the scenes? Like how do you see yourself as a good person and do all these things? Like, and you're right, like it's a justifying everything in her mind. Like yeah, brilliantly done but terrifying.
It did she did it very well, because man, I was so pissed off. I was like, oh my God, we need to, how can we get rid of her?
Yeah, seriously. And the thing was too is like it wasn't like everybody, not, or at least a decent number of people in the town seemed to be like quite religious and attending church and have like strong beliefs, but none of them were going crazy and batshit like the way that Tracy was, right? Like she was a special case of psycho within that was also like wrapped up in like the way that religion was used against her growing up. And it really shows like how like people like that can really permeate through like a community of people so easily, who do have good intentions, who do have good morals and all of that. It was just, yeah, brilliant stuff.
I think one of the reasons why she was being so like adamant and so obsessed with having people come and kind of, get into the same mindset as her, is because she wanted to have other people be like, okay, well, see, I'm not the only one that thinks like this. I'm not the only one that feels like this. I'm justified in how I feel because look, they agree with me. They also think like this. She didn't want to be on her own. No, she knew deep down inside, she knows that the way that she was acting was not correct. But she's never going to admit that. It's just that belief is going to stay there. And she wanted other people to come and like kind of like second that.
Yeah. Yeah, she wanted the validation and she wanted the accomplices and she wanted the manufactured consent, essentially. Like she wanted like the acceptance and the like the yeah, the consent to continue doing the crazy batshit things she was doing and to continue down this like insane road, because now she's got followers and she's like, well, I can't be wrong on my, when all these people are following me, like they, I have to be right because they're following me. And I think it's yeah, it is wild.
Like she wanted a reason to keep doing to her daughter what she was doing to her daughter. She wanted,
Exactly.
she wanted, she wanted like, okay, well, if they're here, then that means what I'm doing to my kid is the right thing. And that's how she was convincing herself.
And she wanted to be the hero so badly, right? Like it's almost like when she found out that her daughter was potentially doing bad things, it almost like she couldn't wait to like jump in and be the hero kind of thing, right? Like she wanted to like save her daughter. Like instead of, she didn't even like verify or validate or anything before she jumped the gun. She's like, my daughter's bad. I'm gonna have to save her. I'm gonna, be the hero here, kind of thing. And it was, yeah, it's power is a wild thing.
Yeah, especially when people like I said, you already know that she had there's a thin line between low self-esteem to God narcissistic complexes. Because one, if you start with a low self-esteem, and sometimes if your mind is not right, you get a little bit of that, attention and validation. It just goes the complete opposite way, in the wrong way, right?
And did she have purpose? I don't remember whether she had a job. Like how it, like she's a single mom with this like big house. How? Where is the money? How? Because she was just volunteering at, like all we saw was her volunteering at the church like once a week, and like nobody used to show up, and then people started showing up once the hysteria started. But we never actually see her work, and she was constantly like doing things during the day that would be like during work hours. Like she was going to her daughter's school, and she was doing all these like. Did she not have a purpose? Like that's the thing, is she didn't have a purpose beyond what the Reverend was telling her, who she was, right? And she didn't, like, where were her parents? Like where's where's this, like, what is she doing in her life? Like that's the other part of it too, is like, yes, like the like the lack of self-esteem, but there's also like the lack of purpose in her life, like lack of direction, lack of purpose in her life. And so she's trying to hold on to like anything that does give her that validation, that purpose. And it happened to be,
She laid all of that on her daughter. She made her daughter her whole purpose, her whole thing, the obsession with her daughter. And I think what she wanted to do was I guess she wanted her daughter to kind of like feel the same way towards her, because she needed her daughter. Her daughter did not need her.
yes, yep, exactly.
I guess I guess that was kind of like a fear for her as well. Because if her daughter goes away, if she starts doing her own thing, then again, where, like you said, what other purpose does she have? What else is she going to do? So she clinged on her daughter in a very obsessive, bad way.
Yeah. Yep.
No, bad.
So many bad choices,
So many
decisions,
bad choices. Oh my god.
yeah.
Oh man. So with the show now, what maybe were some of do you have a favorite character? Do you have a few favorite characters?
Hmm. Oh man. I don't know if I have favorites, honestly. Um, yeah, because I was thinking about this earlier as well. Like, I think I like the dynamic between characters a lot. Like the trio that start that band, and like Dylan and Spud and Jordy. Those three, I love the dynamic there. I love the dynamic between them. I love the dynamic between the three of them and the rest of the school, especially Jordy. Maybe I do. Yeah, I think she's up there for me. Jordy, just like being unapologetically herself, and just like, leaning into like doing everything 100%. Like she's not, she doesn't like, yes, she doesn't really care about what people think of her, but then also she's going to use that, you know, to her entertainment or advantage. But I think her and Spud, like the two of them had like a very strong sense of self, and they didn't really let that shake, even while everybody was calling them, Satanists, and, trying to get them like arrested and chasing after them. Like they were very, like they had the surety in themselves and that loyalty to each other and Dylan. Yeah. So yeah, I think I really like, yeah, that dynamic there. I think I really enjoyed watching their scenes, especially like Jordy just being like, no bullshit, just calling everything out as it is, and just being unabashedly herself. I think I really enjoyed that.
I think I gotta agree with that. I really loved how they interacted with each other, the relationship that they had with each other and stuff. Of course, it's that if there was a little bit of the trope of one of them always messes up, and then the other two are the ones that are really there all the time and stuff. But yeah, I like the way they did it, but I also liked Bruce Campbell's character, Chief Dandridge.
Oh, you're right. Yes. Yes.
We find it like we get to see somebody that's actually, you know, he's not given into this hysteria. He's trying to be very level headed, especially when it comes to the kids. Like he was being very fair to the kids, trying to make sure that he didn't jump into conclusions. Uh, he wanted to make sure, investigate everything before he goes accusing somebody. He would give them the benefit of the doubt, you know, treated them with respect.
Yeah. It wasn't until he caught Dylan with Judith on that pentagram. I think that after that is when he started getting the hives and he started hallucinating. And because it became personal to him, like his idea of his granddaughter it didn't even get shattered because her mom tells him, like, you know what she's like your granddaughter, you know what Judith is like. But I think he still sort of like wanted to hold on to like the idea of her being like this good, innocent young girl. And then when he like sees the two of them,
And the
like
whole thing with the
what
ritual
to
and
do,
stuff.
the
Yeah.
ritual like on that pentagram, I think that's when he started like playing into the hysteria.
Yeah, but he doesn't like out. It's not a. It's not as apparent like the other people. I think subconsciously it was there because he wasn't still like, oh my god, the devil and all that stuff. But I think subconsciously it still was there enough to like manifest on him. That was crazy. Yeah, he was still trying, even though yeah, he had that fear, but he was still trying to stay as level headed as he could because he knew if he gave into that, everything would come. Was gonna get out of control. Because at least there had to be one person there trying to keep everything, calm and grounded and stuff, you know. So that was a lot of his play too.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right. I think he did a good job trying to like, I mean, he doesn't succeed at the end, but for the most part, for quite a while, like it could have gotten way worse way earlier had he not done like gone about it the way that he did and tried to like, listen to it. Because he's also not dismissing, like he's not dismissing Tracy, even if he thinks she's batshit. He's not outright dismissing her, but he's like, we'll take it under consideration. We'll look into it. So he's not, he doesn't want to antagonize people because he understands that like the fear is real and like the what people are experiencing and how they feel is real. Right. He doesn't want to dismiss that, but he also doesn't want them to get carried away and start doing things that are going to be really dangerous and harmful, like in the finale when the church gets set aflame. Right. Well, I mean, the witch hunt, and then they're about to, yeah, all of that in the finale, right, when it does finally come to a head. I guess, yeah, he was able to like hold that off for quite a while. The other character that I think grew on me was Faith, because in the beginning, like you don't really see a whole lot of her, and she's sort of like unsure of what to do. And she's like, when she comes back, when she's found, she doesn't really know what happened. And then she's just trying to follow what her mom is saying. And then she like realizes like, oh no, my mom is up to no good. And so she starts like kind of pulling back a little, and then she starts like confronting her. And then when her mom tells her to plant the evidence and like I knew that she wasn't going to do it, but I was curious how she was going to go about it. And then concocting that whole plan and then putting herself in danger, knowing the risks, knowing what could potentially happen to her. Like I had a lot of respect for her for that, like towards the
Absolutely.
end. Yeah. Also another brilliantly acted character.
No, she was really good. And I love that we get that kind of like we get that character that is able to get out of that cycle, in spite of her mother, uh, being the way she was, you would think that she was going to get into that. She was staying, because when we first see her, she's like very shy in her cocoon. Like you would think that she could be easily manipulated by anybody, especially by her mother, and that they were kind of hit. It kind of seemed like that in certain ways when she was like doing what her mother told her to do and stuff like that. But then she comes out and she gets that courage and she gets out of that, she out of her mom's grip, and she becomes her own person. And I absolutely love that for her character arc.
Yeah. And it sucks that her boyfriend, yeah. And I think it really sucks that her boyfriend ends up dying because like she was really just looking for like a genuine connection, having lost, like her and Jordy used to be friends and her mom essentially like, was the cause of. Exactly. And so she doesn't have like those, and everybody again has like a certain idea of her, but she's not looking for, you know, popularity in school. She's not looking for rebellion. She's just looking for like a genuine connection with somebody. She finds that with her boyfriend, I forget his name, the quarterback that gets killed early on. We barely see anything of him, but what we do see is so sweet between the two of them. And she finally finds like somebody that she's able to like connect with. And he's like connecting with her as well because he's like, also feeling similarly where there's like all of these expectations on him and he's like, this isn't me, this is just what people see me as, right? They're able to have that like connection, and then of course Mel gets ruined by her mom. Oh man. Oh, poor
So
guy.
so. I felt so bad. I was like, damn. I figured maybe they were gonna like also find them like, you know, somewhere over there. But then of course, you know, the little twist of him dying from because of the allergic reaction or asthma, the inhaler. Yeah.
Asthma, and he didn't have the inhaler. But then they go as far as to like cut out his heart and like put his
To
body
do the
in the
whole
woods
thing.
and put the pentagram on like the house and what I don't even know what the hell they were thinking with that stag. Like the
Like,
levels
what was the?
that they went to just to like hide the fact that they messed up while kidnapping this girl.
But I didn't. Why did they even? What was the reason for coming up with that idea of making it like a satanic thing?
Because it gives Tracy then like a role in the community. I think the Reverend says it at one point that he essentially gave her the opportunity to be more than what she was in the community because then she could like save them. Like he or was it Tracy that said that? But anyways, at one point they talk about how like putting on that whole show brought to light the like the fears that they had about the community and the fact that like you know all these Satan worshippers were like becoming more prominent and people weren't taking it seriously. And so this was like their way of like saving the community by making it real or whatever. It's complete bullshit. Like again, just justifying all of the evil that they're doing, essentially. Like he killed a kid. Yeah. It's and I mean I think and the thing is too, like when he started getting that asthma attack, had they like left him on the road, called 911, he could have been saved. Like they could have revived him at that point. Um, may not have been pretty, but like but they didn't. They drug her, put him in the van, and they're just like, okay, yeah, like he's dead. And then they like do a whole bunch of awful things to cover it up, and they don't even do it properly. Oh man.
So bad. And you know, it was crazy that Tracy essentially at the end becomes what the Reverend is. She becomes the new Reverend, essentially, because the Reverend is also a narcissistic asshole. Like he thinks that he was there to save the poor kids, and then, but then again, we see how he's using everybody to his advantage, and he manipulates
Yeah, and
everyone
blaming
and gets
everybody.
by everybody else, and then putting everybody else in the crossroads just to save his own ass, you know. And that's basically what Tracy ends up doing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and exactly. And it was like that chain of abuse essentially, where he's forcing Tracy to like fix the situation and all of that. And then she's forcing her daughter to
Or
fix the
to fix the
situation. And all
situation.
of it is through illegal means.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Like it's yeah. Exactly. It's like a cycle. And like the fact that she is kept in touch with well, it seems like she's kind of kept in touch with him over the years because he still has like a powerful presence like in her life. So even when she calls him, she's like, "Oh, I hope it's the right number." It doesn't seem like, the last time she saw him was when he did the indoctrination, essentially, or whatever brainwashing that he did to her. No, there was definitely like, other times in her life that he has connected with her and like probably given her that purpose. Um, yeah, yeah, and I'm glad that, like you said, Faith broke that cycle and got out of it. Yeah,
Oh man, I will say that the kids, like where the kids or the teens, all of them did a spectacular job with their acting and the way, it was so good. All of them did like played their role perfectly, the way that, some of them being the scared, some of them being the ones that are, again, just making that a group that is so different types of personalities, different type of, teens, and then working together like that. And it was believable. I believed them.
yeah, that was kind of also brilliant. Like the whole the whole like the fake satanic cult and how they brought it together and like every like Spud, Jordy and Dylan each go to like a single like an individual person that is also an outcast and like sell it on. And the one kid who I forget what he did, what role he had, not I think he was, oh, I forget what his like what he did in school. I think he was part of like AV club or something like that. And he's just like, yeah, sounds good. I'm in.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah. So I'll do it.
I love that. Yeah, like everybody else is like asking questions or being like, this isn't a prank, right? And he's like, yeah, sounds good. I'm in.
And wasn't it the choir guy? Wasn't it the
maybe
choir
choir?
guy?
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
No, maybe it was the choir.
Guy.
Yeah, the choir kid. And then the goat girl.
The goat girl. It was perfect because you would think, like, again, they present her as the girl that that she's just gonna be quiet and like she was like so sassy. Like,
oh yeah,
I loved her.
Oh,
she
I love,
was
and
so
again,
funny.
she's like comfortable in herself, like comfortable with herself, comfortable in her skin, and had like a strong sense of like all of these kids that were like, you know, essentially like outcasts or misfits. Like they had a pretty good sense of who they were, and they just were happy to be part of something else, like you know, like to be involved. Exactly.
I did feel like the only person that really didn't have that sense of self of like she was still trying to find herself was Judith. Cause she was just trying to find herself by what other people were doing. That's why she kept kind of pushing what's his name? Dylan, right? To do all these things. Instead of her doing it themselves, instead of her doing herself, right? I don't know. Like she it was very ungenuine. And like I don't know. It just I didn't. I'm not saying she's not a bad person. She's not that she was a bad person. It's just that again, she knew how far she could push things with Dylan and everybody else.
And everybody else, like, and I think with her, she wasn't just looking for like her sense of self, but she was looking for people to see her as what she wanted to be, not who she actually was or what other people thought she was. And she wanted an audience to like her rise or her like her becoming herself or her becoming this, you know, this thing like this leader, this person everybody listens to and will follow no matter how crazy, you know, her ideas were. I think she wanted that influence beyond just what people thought, who people thought she was. Like she wanted like real influence and real like impact. And she was using Dylan to get that essentially, like manipulating him into doing what she wanted, but then also then being like, okay, well, he's the head of the satanic cult. I'm like his girlfriend. And so like, you know, now you have to kind of pay attention to me as well. And you know, I actually have like to her, she actually had like influence, right, within the group of people that she thought were the satanic cult.
I did like, however, that she owned it. Especially when she got caught and stuff, she didn't, because normally we see the whole, woe is me, poor little girl that I didn't do anything wrong. They forced me. She was like, no, yeah, I did that.
Especially with her grandfather. Like she could have backtracked with her grandfather and he would have believed her, right? Like she could have played it as like, I didn't do anything.
They made me do it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, she owned it. She was really like into it.
She was into it.
Yeah. Another brilliant character. Very well acted as well. Yeah.
Again, I think like I said, I don't think that she was just a bad person. It's just she was just tired of the same stuff,
And I think, and she got what she wanted at the end. Like she was getting shipped off to go live with her dad, and she's like, I think it was like in California. She's like, California, just like big at like, it's like, oh my god, I'm gonna go like somewhere where I can be famous and influential and be seen, and I can invent myself in a different way than what this town already thinks I am. Like, yeah, she was just like chomping at that bit. She really wanted to go. Yeah, when she lost the recommendation letter from the principal, she went crazy because she really wanted out. Like she was like in her mind too big for this small town and didn't want to spend her life there and wanted to get out. So in the end, she got what she wanted. Did a lot of crazy things along the way. Oh man, this show is not getting enough attention. It deserves a lot more. It should have been like one of the top, like, things that people were discussing in October, Halloween month, right? It was it had everything in there to be like, it is such a great show. It has like elements in there to make it like a cult classic, maybe. Like I think we were talking about this before, like the way that they're shooting scenes, the cinematography, the colors, the lighting, the scene transitions, the slow-mos that they're doing, especially towards the beginning, the story that they're telling, the characters, like it was such a like the show was so well done, and I think more people should be watching it. It is a very fun watch, and they do amp up like the not necessarily horror, but like kind of the thriller vibes of it. There's a little bit of like horror in there, but I wouldn't necessarily like label it a horror. I'd label it more thriller, but it's like a solid like thriller mystery series. Really well done, really well acted, really enjoyable.
Yeah. No. I completely agree. And I love that, it has that, it's not extremely campy, but it has a campy feeling from that era of the 80s. And they did it so well. They did the era, the costuming, the hair, the vibes, everything. They did it so well. Like you would feel that you're watching this back in the 1980s. It was a show that would come out at that time. And they did it so well. Like you said, very much cult classic type of feel, especially because the showrunner said that they took inspiration from all of that, all of the shows and the movies from back then that had to deal with, this type of things, supernatural things and stuff. So yeah, definitely super recommended. I wish it would have gotten more traction, more marketing.
I feel like it's going to be one of those shows that once it goes on other streaming platforms, people are going to start watching it and be like, why did nobody tell me about this show? And it's like, we tried. But yeah, yeah. I feel like, yeah, every time a show that's on Peacock or like Kevin can F himself, as soon as it went on like Netflix, like, it got a new set of like a different set of audience watchers. It got more, it got a, different audience from Netflix. And then people, started talking about it. Interview with the Vampire, same thing. Like a lot of these shows, when they stay on like a single platform, and it's like a single platform that maybe not everybody has a subscription to, people don't quite know of until it kind of like goes on to, more streaming platforms, and then they start actually like, watching it. Peacock has a lot of really great shows. They have a lot of really great shows, and I wish more people knew about them and actually like watch them, because I quite enjoy them.
I think so, and I think I'm being hopeful that we're gonna get a season 2. And it's not gonna go the Netflix route. I have never heard Peacock doing that, like just canceling shows and then that's it. So I'm hoping that we get a season 2, because this definitely was very, it was open ended enough to have a continuation of the story.
That is true. Yeah.
You know,
it does end in a satisfying way, but there's also like, yeah, open ended enough that there's definitely more story that can be told. And I hope we actually get to see more story with the same cast, or even potentially like, another story in the same time period, but with a different cast. You never know, right? Like it could be like, what happens here sort of ripples out somewhere else.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But the cast was incredible. I would like to see them again.
Them. They were so good.
Yeah, so good.
So before we sign off, I wanted to actually bring up the fact that I was able to interview the cast and the showrunners for the show at New York Comic Con. It was so much fun. I got to talk to Julie Bowen, Anna Camp, and Bruce Campbell, and then, of course, the 2 showrunners, creators of the show. So that was really, really cool. It was... Yeah, no, they were amazing. Oh my God, Julie and Anna, because they sat together in the round table, and the same way that they were just like bouncing off each other in the show, that's exactly how we're doing an interview. Like, go watch the interviews at templeleague.com. You can find it. Just bouncing back and forth from each other, the way they were just like interacting, and so good. So definitely go check it out.
Also, we can maybe.
Yeah, I will link it.
I was going to say.
Yeah. We'll link it down
link
in the podcast. So go check that out, guys. You're definitely gonna enjoy it.
Yeah, Kelly's incredible at interviews, y'all. You have to watch those.
No, but definitely, guys, if you haven't watched the show, you definitely should check it out. But I mean, if you've been listening to this whole podcast, that means you did. So that's good. So just go tell other people to watch it too.
Yes, tell your friends.
Tell everyone. Oh man. All right. So this is going to wrap up this episode of the Temple of Geek podcast. We want to thank everyone who tuned in today, and especially our, my homegirl Sue for being with me today to discuss this awesome show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit us up on Facebook or Twitter by using the handle Temple of Geek. Do you want to check out some of our other episodes or shows? Why don't you head over to templeofgeek.com, where you will find all sorts of content pertaining to the world of geek. Again, Sue, thank you so much, babe, for being here today. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Where can they find you on the socials, Sue?
Oh yeah, I'm at Sue's Theories on TikTok and Twitter and Instagram.
Okay, and you can find me, Kari, as Star Wars Tia at TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter as well. So this is it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.